Hi, Marie Camenares here, and today I'd like to talk to you about gardening with allergies. Now, if you have allergies, you know it's no fun gardening. And one of the most common causes of allergy sufferers when you're out there gardening is pollen. So I would like to recommend a wonderful book to you if you are planning to put in a garden, or even if you have an existing garden. This is called the Allergy Fighting Garden. This book is by Thomas Leo Ogden, and he did a lot of work on studying what amount of pollen different plants produce. He made them from a scale of 1 to 10, and he has a listing in this book of many different plants that you're going to come across in your garden, and they have the growing conditions, how to make it safe in your garden, and what is that listing of that plant. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 10? So as you know, if you're a sufferer of allergies, especially allergies to pollen, you are going to have itchy, red, swollen eyes. You'll have a stuffy, runny nose as part of your symptoms of being an allergy sufferer. So we want to see if we can reduce these symptoms for you. So what are some of the things you can do to reduce the symptoms? Well, when the pollen count is really very high, you can stay indoors. You can also, when you're indoors, keep your windows closed, keep your air conditioning on, and don't go outdoors if you're suffering so much. If it's not too bad and you are outdoors, when you come in, make sure you change your clothes. Even take a shower and wash your hair. That will help remove the pollen from your body and reduce your symptoms and reduce your suffering. You can also wear a hat and glasses, because this will reduce the amount of pollen that gets on your hair and in your eyes. And for those of you with air conditioning, I recommend that you put an allergy quality filter in the air conditioner to help reduce the amount of pollen that may be in the air just from opening up the doors and coming in and out, or opening up the windows to get fresh air in at times. A couple of other tips is to limit the amount of time that your pets stay outdoors, because they're going to get pollen on their fur and they're going to bring that in. And another thing that I would suggest is when you do wash your clothes, put them in the dryer, not out on the line to dry, because if you put them on the line, they're going to pick up pollen. I'd like to also talk to you about plants. Now, dioecious plants are plants that have their reproductive parts on separate plants. Some plants have both male and female parts on the same plant, in sometimes the same flower. But plants such as holly, they have a plant that will have the male part and a plant that has the female part. That's a dioecious plant. And that's what you want to make sure, that if you're planting an allergy-free or reduced allergy garden, that you're going to be planting and looking for the female plants, not the male plants that are going to produce the pollen. Now, years ago when they were planting trees, a lot of male trees were being planted instead of female trees. And you know why they did this? They wanted to avoid the mess. No seeds, no seed pods, no fruit, just nice, pretty plants, nice, pretty trees. But they forgot one thing. All those male trees were producing lots and lots of pollen, and they also forgot about the wildlife, birds and other pollinators that needed those seeds and fruits and seed pods. So now we're a little more aware of things, and we're trying to be a little bit more proactive. We're trying to reduce the amount of male plants that are out there and male trees being planted, and put more female trees into public places and playgrounds, especially school grounds, because children suffer so much with the allergies. So in this book, The Allergy Fighting Garden, Ogden explains how pollen has different weights on different plants. And the heavier the pollen grain is, the more likely you're not going to suffer from the allergies. He came up with his own system called Opals. That's OPALS. And in this system, ranking the plants from 1 to 10, he will describe why a plant is ranked 1, which is the most friendliest for you to plant, and why it's ranked 10, which is going to be the one that's going to aggravate your allergies the most. So we want to stay with plants that are on the lower end of the scale when you're out there planting your garden, or when you decide to go places and you want to see where you want to go and what you want to do. I don't want to discourage you. I want to talk to you about some of the plants that you can plant. Some of those plants are salvias and plants in the mint family. They have nectar, and they have the male and female parts both on the same plant. They are good pollinators. Mountain mint is a wonderful pollinator, and you will not have your allergies affected by these plants. You also want to avoid plants that have strong smells, because maybe that would trigger allergies for you. So maybe roses are not for you, even though their pollen is not too intense. Acer rubrum autumn glory, which is a red maple, is a female plant. It does not have any pollen, and it's ranked number 1 in this book, so that's a safe plant for you to plant. It's disease resistant and it has no smell. Petunias are ranked number 2. They only produce a very small amount of pollen. Their smell isn't allergy activated, so you'll be safe with those plants as well. They are insect pollinated, and they don't have a strong smell, as I said before. The male and female parts of the plant are on the same plant, and the male part is hidden deep within the flower. Dianthus, or pinks, or carnations, they're all known by those names, are ranked number 3 by this book, and they are insect pollinated. They have what they call the perfect flower. Both male and female parts are on the flower. What about hydrangeas? They're ranked between 3 and 6. Hydrangea macrophylla, those are those Easter hydrangeas, the pink and blue ones. Those are ranked number 3. And the PG hydrangeas, the ones you see in the fall that turn those beautiful colors, that's ranked number 5. So those aren't too bad. What you'd want to do is avoid planting any plant that has a higher number anywhere near a bedroom window or any window that you keep open, because that will certainly bring the pollen in and aggravate your condition. If you're a fan of delphinium, you're in luck. Delphinium is ranked number 3, and so the weight of the pollen is probably heavier. The potency of the pollen is probably not as strong as higher ranking plants. And also don't forget, the size of the particles of that pollen, the smaller it is, the more likelihood the fact that it's going to get windblown and aggravate your allergies. Now for the not so good news. Daisy-like type flowers, like you see here, they're not so good. Flowers in the aster family, they're ranked pretty high. They produce a lot of pollen, and so think twice before you plant them, or plant them further away in your backyard so you're not so exposed to the pollen. I'd like to give you a few more plants that are ranked between 1 and 3, low allergy plants. Snapdragons, they're a beautiful annual plant to plant. That's ranked number 1. Baptisia, a beautiful perennial flower with tall spikes of blue, sometimes white, and sometimes yellow, depending on what species that you get. This perennial plant is ranked number 2. You're safe with Baptisia, and it blooms in early spring I really recommend it. The flower shapes look like sweet peas, and it's just so lovely, and it has a very delicate foliage as well. Birch trees, very, very common in the landscape. I'm sorry, but they're ranked number 9. I'd stay away from them if you have allergies. Don't plant them in your garden. Use the maple that I discussed earlier that was ranked number 1, the Acer rubrum. Camellias and beautyberry bushes, you're in luck. Those are number 3. They're safe for allergy sufferers. Go ahead and plant them. They're beautiful. The beautiful coleus, that's number 1. Coreopsis, there's some that are singles and some that are doubles. The doubles are number 3. They're much better to plant than the singles. The Coreopsis that are singles, that's the tick seed or tickweed plants, they're number 5, the singles. So I would go with the doubles. Those are safer. Your spring flowering bulbs, crocus, hyacinths, tulips, those are all good. They range between 1 and 3 on the opal scale. So you can go ahead and plant as many of those as you like. Just make sure you're not planting them under a birch tree. Moving up the scale, lilacs are a 5 or a 6 depending on the species. So depending on how bad your allergies are, you may want to rethink planting lilacs or plant them in a distant back part of your yard where you can enjoy them and not really be affected by them. Heuchera or coral bells are a low-growing perennial plant. They're ranked number 1. They're very safe and they're beautiful. They come in many different colors. They're a mound-shaped perennial plant and they are beautiful ground covers. They like a part shade condition, part sun, so they're very versatile and you can grow them feeling safe and at ease with your allergies with coral bells. Azaleas, rhododendrons, spirea, they're all ranked between 3 and 4, with the exception of the bridal veil spirea, that's ranked number 5, so just be mindful of that one. Pansies are marked number 1, they're safe. Vincas, number 2, also good. Weigelias are number 3, but what about oak? Number 8, you have to be careful with oaks. What about Cryptomerica japonica, the Japanese cedar? That's ranked number 10, so I definitely would avoid that plant. What about the ground cover, liriope? You're in luck. That's ranked number 3. Arborvitae are ranked number 8. So you see, this is giving you a little idea of what you're dealing with in the garden. A lot of these plants that are high-ranking numbers are pretty commonplace in the landscape. I hope that you're finding this helpful, and I also would like to talk to you a little bit more about your dogs and allergies, because they suffer from allergies as well. Dogs are, for the most part, very low to the ground with all their sniffing and smelling, and they also can suffer from allergies just like we do. So all the plants that I've mentioned to you so far and all the plants that are in this wonderful book that I'm recommending is something to keep in mind for your dogs as well. They do suffer from allergies and they can bring the pollen indoors, so be careful with them when you do plant a garden. Another plant to be careful about, and I'm sorry to disappoint you because everyone loves sunflowers, but they're ranked pretty high. Their pollen is dispersed by the wind, and just look at the disc size with all the seeds and all the pollen that they produce. I spoke to you a lot about pollen and allergies, but there are also skin allergies. So some of the plants that you have to be careful with the skin allergies are iris. When you're digging up and dividing your iris, make sure you wear a pair of gloves because the roots and sometimes the stems of the iris and the leaves can cause dermatitis. So you want to be careful with that. Another thing you want to be careful with is when you have plants that are infested with insects. Certain insects, like aphids, produce what is called a honeydew. It's an excretion from the insect, from all the eating that it does. And on this honeydew that it produces, there's a mold called sooty mold. And some people have allergies towards molds. So you want to be careful with that as well. Keep your plants nice and clean, space them apart. Make sure if they have a high pollen count, you keep them away. Keep them disease resistant, or make sure that you buy disease resistant plants, and have a good time gardening. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me. This is Marie Camenares saying bye for now. Stay healthy, stay safe, and happy gardening and safe gardening.